Diet is one of the most highly discussed topics in the online health space, with one guru telling you all you need to do is eat this way in order to offer yourself long-term benefits, while another promotes the complete opposite way. But what happens when you've tried all of these diets and none of them offer you long-term symptomatic alleviation? Where does that then leave you? Before I continue with the reason as to why I believe this happens, I want you to think very carefully about all of the people in your life currently and all of the people that you might have grown up with. You probably knew someone, and I virtually guarantee you came across someone, who ate absolute garbage on a day-to-day basis, and yet the way they felt then is far better than what you feel like now. Straight away, what this tells me and what it should tell you is that food is not the determining factor behind why we experience the symptoms that we do. And if food isn't the cause, then it's even more unlikely that food is going to be the solution. Instead of questioning food and the possible effects of it, the much bigger question that we should be asking ourselves is, what is it that's separating my body from the body of that person who's able to eat whatever they want? Why is it that I have to eat so cleanly, I have to have all these restrictive diets in place, and yet I still feel bad when there's somebody else out there who's able to eat absolute rubbish on a day-to-day basis and suffer such minimal consequences? So when I had this thought and this realization, it then led me on to learning more about the human body, and in particular our brain and our nervous system. And what I ended up finding out was that our brain controls an awful lot of processes unconsciously and automatically. And what I want to do is just to read you out a few of these things, just so you get a better idea of just how much our brain is really doing for us. So some of the things it influences includes organ function, immune activity, hormonal release, breathing patterns, sleep-wake cycles, digestion, heart rate, temperature regulation, pain processing, blood vessel constriction and dilation, and postural control, and that's just to name a few. Could there be a possibility that our brain is functioning in a way that causes us to have issues with a combination of any of these processes, and it's ultimately what's separating our body from the body of somebody who's able to eat whatever they want? Now, I'm not for 1 second saying that certain foods aren't better for us than others, and that certain foods won't impact us as much as others. But if we really want to get to the bottom of what's truly restricting us in order to be able to eat a wider variety of foods, maybe it might be worth investigating potential dysfunctional patterns within our brain and find ways of addressing these. And this is precisely what I go over in the Unbeatable Blueprint online course. Here I share with you over 5 hours of life-changing content where you'll learn so much about the brain and potential patterns of dysfunction, and more importantly, the steps that you can take in order to improve this. But what I ended up finding out about myself was that I had certain areas of hyperactivity occurring within my brain. This was where there was certain neuronal activity that was occurring which shouldn't have been occurring, and this is because these parts of the brain weren't sufficiently being inhibited or calmed down. And the reason as to why these parts of my brain weren't being sufficiently inhibited was because there was inadequate and inaccurate neuronal firing into my brain from the sensory division of my peripheral nervous system, which basically meant that because my brain was having issues with taking in information about my external environment at an unconscious and ongoing basis, and it was actually unable to correctly decode the variables around it, it was converting this information, and because it was mismatched with what was actually going on around me, my brain was having issues maintaining control over the processes in the rest of my body. So before I knew anything about this, I was spending year after year experimenting with so many diets, and none of them offered me long-term symptomatic alleviation. However, once I had the sensory division of my peripheral nervous system assessed and fine-tuned, what that ended up doing for me was delivering more accurate information to my brain at an unconscious and ongoing basis, and that then allowed me to eat practically whatever I wanted with very minimal consequences. And this taught me a very profound lesson when it came to understanding what might be the best approach in order to try to best attempt to fix ongoing and debilitating chronic symptoms. And that's that it's far more beneficial to try to find ways of strengthening your machine to make it more resilient to its environment than it is to try to find ways of making the environment more accommodating to your dysfunction. And I don't know about you, but I never truly felt like removing certain foods from my diet so that I was having a far more restrictive way of eating was actually a viable long-term strategy in order to address the root cause of the problem. For me, this feels a little bit more like an approach in order to mask the issue in hope that the symptoms never re-emerge.